Your Authentic Self is a podcast designed to guide you towards a deeper, more rewarding life by nurturing your emotional, mental, physical and spiritual well-being. We're thrilled to take you on this journey. Welcome to today's episode.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Your Authentic Self podcast. And today, Lee and I are joined by a guest, and we have Tera-Sundri joining us from Canada. So thank you, Tera-Sundri, for joining us today. It's really good of you to take the time, especially as it's the middle of the night there.
Yeah. Look, it's my pleasure. I'm really honoured to be here. But I live in Australia and I'm just vacationing in Canada. And I messed up the timing, so I thought it was going to be 2 p.m. and we'd be on the ski slopes or skating or something, and I'd just take an hour out of my time there, and actually it's the middle of the night. So I'm hiding in a bathroom. You see the towel behind me. I'm hiding in a bathroom so as not to disturb my kids because we're in a hotel. It's far too cold outside on the balcony.
Oh, well, we really appreciate you making it work, even if it's in the hotel bathroom. It's really good for you to join us.
Yeah.
So just to introduce you to the people who are watching or listening to this, it's quite a resume that I've got here for you. So I'll take a deep breath, and this is what I know about you so far, right? So I've got that you're a writer, mother, and a life coach, a best-selling contributing author of The Successful Woman's Mindset, a Kundalini yoga teacher, a women's health and sexual empowerment mentor, a massage therapist, and you facilitate retreats in person and online, all alongside being the founder of the Kundalini for Women Massage Training Academy, where you train women in all things related to Kundalini massage, yoga, body health, sexual empowerment, and a mother of 2 children. That's a lot.
Yeah, that does sound like a lot, doesn't it?
It is a lot. Does it sound like a lot hearing it read back to you like that?
Oh, it's funny when you read it back. I think things just evolve. You know, that's how my life has evolved into doing all of those things, and they all tie into one another,
right?
Because we are ultimately, I find, and in fact, funny thing is when you say all that, I guess the thing where I put most of my time these days isn't mentioned in there.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
Which is the Vedic counselling.
Okay.
But we're intimate beings. That's what it comes down to, and so it all ties in together through that, because I believe that intimacy is a primary need, like water and shelter and what have you. I tend to say we can live without it, but we can't thrive without it. But in fact, it is a primary need, and it's been proven that we actually can't even live without it. We start to die without intimacy, and it was shown in studies many years ago with babies in orphanages. Yeah, that they ran a study really, but where they had babies that were given attention and babies that weren't.
Yeah,
and
study.
So it is a primary need.
Intimacy, it sounds to me like you're actually kind of talking about connection as opposed to sex. So intimacy is am I right?
Yeah, no, it's really true. So there's many layers of intimacy, and the real true need exactly is not sexual. So intimacy in the West, we think of intimacy as sex, and it's not. We can have sex without intimacy, and we can have intimacy without sex.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting thing, because what I was going to say is sitting here in my pajamas in a bathroom in Canada reminds me of a I did a 6-part TV series several years ago on intimacy. It was a US series, and it was very Paula Yates influence, let's say. I was sat in a bedroom with a big bed head behind me and in lingerie, talking about intimacy. But the whole point of it was every episode was about a different type of intimacy, and one of them was even intimacy in the boardroom.
Wow.
Because our intimacy and our need for intimacy and how we receive it and how we show it affects how we communicate with everybody in our life.
Yeah, it's quite a statement.
Yeah, so it's really, it can be to do with sex, but it's not just about sex.
No.
And that's what I'm about.
Sure. I wanted to make that point because I just thought anyone listening into this might kind of equate intimacy with sex, and then they might have a different understanding of what we're talking about. So, I mean, for me, intimacy is connection, which could be talking about a problem. I mean, it could be just sitting alongside someone. I think for me, it's about human connection. It sounds like you're kind of...
Absolutely. And it's about connection. It's about being heard, being valued, being validated.
Yeah.
And just receiving heart-centered love.
Yeah.
And that changes our understanding of intimacy. Pardon?
Sorry, go on, Tera-Sundri. I was just going to ask Lee if that's his understanding of intimacy as well.
Yeah.
No. But what you both were saying really is that's something that I speak about, is not just a bit like yourself, Tera-Sundri. What you were saying, it can be about sexual, but it's for me, intimacy at times is a lot deeper in that. You know, it's about, I think you've mentioned it now, I think it's having a connection with someone. You don't even have to be speaking and have a connection with somebody. You know, just because all we are is a massive energy. You know, so, and I know that our heart can be felt from 2 meters away. You know, so people can actually feel connection between us. So it can just be through silence, through energy, through verbalization, you know, through support, kindness, compassion, and then obviously all the way through to physical touch. You know, and but it's just that human connection. I think you're saying, Mark, as well, that can be derived in many different forms. But but I agree what you were saying, Tera-Sundri. It's definitely an innate, for me, I believe, an innate need as human beings. You know, and it's very primitive. You know, we needed connection support to survive many years ago, and I think that's where it's funded from.
It is. It's totally about survival, and I guess in everything that I do, it's about bringing together that heart-centered connection, which is, as you said so beautifully, Lee, that it's what we are. It makes up what we are. It's our energy. It affects how our energy works, and we heal through it. We grow through intimacy. We heal with it. I won't go into it here unless you want me to, but I healed stomach cancer with intimacy. Yeah, with vibration and intimacy. That was it, you know. So love. So fascinating. It's really, it does make us thrive.
I hear you saying that. I'm almost thinking, like, how could we not ask a bit more about that? Because that's quite a claim, isn't it? Do you feel comfortable to share a little bit about?
I'm comfortable sharing it. It's I guess it's going off on a bit of a tangent, but
it is, yeah. Let's go on a mini tangent because that sounds fascinating.
Okay, so I am trained as a naturopath and clinical nutritionist and massage therapist, Vedic counselor, all these things. And I sat there and I thought, I didn't even treat myself. I didn't go down the Western medicine path, but I didn't even go down the naturopathic path with herbal medicines and stuff, because I felt our bodies have an innate capacity to heal, and our bodies are designed to create life, not to destroy it. And everything we do to treat cancer attacks the body. So therefore it's attacking us, it's destroying us. And so I felt that all I really need to do is raise my vibrational frequency so that my body can heal itself. It currently doesn't have capacity to heal because it's of such a low vibration. Now, when I started treatment, this was very aggressive cancer. And by the time I was diagnosed and knew what was going on, I had started to die. But everyone believed it was palliative. I'd had people move in to look after me. I was down to 40 kilos in weight. I hadn't kept food down for a month. I was very grey in colour. And I just decided that what would be, but I wasn't going to attack the body. I was going to allow the body to do its thing.
Wow.
I had a friend with a massage table that's strung underneath like a harp. It's called a monochord, and it resonates. You know, she plays it like a harp, and it resonates through every cell in the body because all the layers of timber vibrate. It's fascinating. And I used that, and that raised my frequency enough that I could keep juices down. So I lived on the juice of red dragon fruit and red beetroot, all organic, juiced, and homemade bone broths, and that was it for 12 weeks. And just love. I was surrounded by so much love. I had people, I had farmers providing the organic produce for free. I had people picking it up and delivering it to me. I had someone turned up on my doorstep who at the time I didn't know terribly well, turned up on the doorstep and just said, "I'm here. You don't need to do a thing." She'd left her home, her work, everything, and just turned up to be there to help look after my kids who are still young, and to run me to appointments and to look after the house and just be there. And I had people putting money in my account. I just had love around me, and I honestly believe that was a big part of being cured and allowing me to surrender, to allow my body to do what it needed to do, because I just realized that it may not look how I want it to look, but I have everything that I need, including love.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, are you okay now? I take it you're cancer-free.
12 weeks to cure it. That was it.
That's quite something, isn't it? It's quite an inspiring tale. But I haven't really talked about this much because I guess I've been a bit afraid that people might think I'm mad. But my take on kind of things like cancer or even COVID, when I had that a couple of years ago, was this is just a living thing, and I bet that this living thing will respond to love in the way that all living things respond to love. And so I remember I had COVID and I was sat outside breathing, and I was imagining that the out breath, that the virus would be transmuted through me, but with love. And do you know what I mean? So that, like, obviously it would be passed on, wouldn't it, into the world, because obviously that's what it did. And I was just loving it as it went out. So I was hoping that it would send love as opposed to illness or death, and I don't know, I just sat for a long time just sending the breath out with love, with the intention of love going to the virus or the cells. And hearing you say that, maybe I wasn't so mad after all.
No, that's so beautiful. That really touches me, because it is. It's what we're all about. Yeah. And the body, that's what the body needs.
Yeah.
And being sick is just, it's actually a natural process that our body does require.
I know for me, this is a little bit different, but it's a similar thing, because we're talking about, self-compassion and love, and obviously receiving it from outside. But we're talking about yourself, Tera-Sundri there, and obviously yourself, Mark there, talking about disease or virus. But even personally for myself, or when I've worked with people, and you go to even talking to something like anxiety, I know it's not disease or a virus, but what people do sometimes is try to wrestle and try to fight and try to get away, and it makes the situation a whole lot worse. Your body is not reacting to that very well. So ways I'm working out for me personally and working with people is actually have compassion. I'm going to talk just about the anxiety for the minute. Have compassion for the anxiety, allow it to have its own space, and you can get through this together. And even through personal work people, actually that dissolves, and actually it makes it a little bit more relieving, and so I know it's a little bit different from the disease and the virus, but it's the same thing. I think that self-compassion, that love, and the opening of the heart around the difficulties makes things a lot more relieving, and just with that self-compassion, and makes it more bearable, manageable.
It's almost like we're talking about, I think your story initially, Tera-Sundri, was about the love and the intimacy that you gained from your people who are around and supporting you. But we're also talking now, I guess, about almost like intimacy with self, aren't we? Like loving ourselves and connecting to ourselves.
Very much so. And it's fascinating that we've ended up here, because that's one of the things that I wanted to get across today in this discussion was how it always starts with self. It is always about self, always about self. I with couples a lot, and it's never about the two of them. It's about each as an individual first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of our problems start with self.
Sorry, it's all about.
All of our problems start with self.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All of
Yeah.
our solutions start with self.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Mm.
Wow. I'm glad we went off on that little tangent there. That was just such a valuable exploration. And I was just thinking about how we use like disconnecting language, so we might talk about, our cancer, for example, in a really hateful, angry way, almost like we're trying to disconnect from it, or, my bad knee, or, we talk about these problems that we might experience in our emotional or physical selves, don't we? We talk about it in like a derogatory way. And I understand it because, who wants a bad knee, or who wants cancer? But it's like, what would happen if we connected to it in a more intimate way? What would happen if we used more connecting or intimate language rather than disconnecting language?
We live in such a disconnected world where we are disconnected not just from others, but we are so disconnected from self. And you're so right, because when we reconnect with ourselves, we start to learn that, well, why is my body experiencing this? Why is my being, myself, experiencing it? Surrender to it and embrace it.
See what comes. I mean, it's over 20 years ago now, I was diagnosed with gallstones, and I saw the scan. There's a lot of gallstones, or there was, in my gallbladder, and of course the surgeon said, the doctor said, you really need to have your gallbladder out. There's a danger of fatality, and I knew I didn't need that operation, and so I hadn't framed it like this until today, but I got intimate with my gallbladder. And so I started to have conversations with it, and, I said, what's going on? What's your message for me? What do you need? What do you need me to know? And had these kind of dialogues with it. And honestly, I've not had any gallbladder pain for probably about 20 years, 18, 20 years, something like that. And I haven't done any treatment. I haven't had any medical intervention. I just got intimate with my gallbladder, I guess.
Fascinating.
Isn't it? Oh, thanks for that. That's a really interesting discussion. So what about you say there that you're a spiritual relationship counselor? I think the word was it all Vedic? Did you say you're
Vedic, yeah.
Or Vedic, sorry, or Vedic counselor, yeah? Can you tell us about that? I'm not familiar with what that term.
Okay, so it's counselling, but with a very strong influence from yogic philosophy, I guess, calling on Buddhism philosophies, Hindu philosophies, Taoist philosophies. So yeah, it's very influenced by a lot of what we've been talking about. So it's relationship counselling, but I feel very much a personal growth thing as well. I can counsel other areas as well, like I work with a lot of children as well. But it comes back to using, like I said, the Vedic philosophies. So we start with the self, and I do Vedic astrology readings as well to determine with individuals where their strengths and weaknesses lie, so that we can use those, we can work on those, because we are who we are at the core, right? We have found certain foundations, and if we know the strengths of those foundations and the weaknesses, we can actually work with those. It's not about going, okay, this is what you are, but it's about knowing how we work best. Yeah, how to be most in the flow, and where our real strengths are. So when we then look at partnerships, and obviously relationship counselling, it's based on partnerships, in intimate partnerships, but we it is also about the workplace and friendships and family and what have you, because every interaction we have with a human being is a relationship. So then we look at partnerships, and we do the Vedic readings together and work out where we can compensate, I guess. And this person's strengths could be your weaknesses, and vice versa, and how we can flow best together Yeah. So that so it's really fascinating when we start to bring those things in. And I find that in I'm going to say all instances,
Oh, is that it?
no matter what the problems are that couples come to me with, ultimately it's the individual's trauma bouncing off the other person.
Yeah. Sorry,
So
did you say in all instances that that's the case?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I would agree.
Yeah. We all go through trauma. We might not even be aware that we have these traumas, and like to a kid, the loss of a balloon is a trauma, right?
Absolutely.
It's massive, because that balloon's their whole world when they're two.
Yeah.
Balloons, their entire world. Yeah. And it creates massive trauma inside them. We are designed to undergo trauma. Yeah, it creates change. However, you mentioned the term disconnected before. We have become so disconnected that we don't realize that when we're experiencing traumas, and we don't know how to process them. So they stay within us until we learn how to process them. And because these traumas stay within us and we don't grow through them, we start to reflect them off the people we're interacting with. So the people we're closest with, of course, are who we bounce them off the most. Yeah, so it's our traumas that impact our relationships.
Absolutely.
So yeah, sorry, Karen. Go on,
No,
Karen.
no.
I've got a question after that. No,
Yeah,
it's really interesting. I really, and I'm alongside you about people's traumas coming into their relationship. So when you're with the couples within this, and this comes up, so then how do you work with that? What do you find beneficial to work with them alongside that?
It's having to, so this is where I guess what I do is a little bit different, because people that see me have to be willing to do their own personal growth work. Yeah. It's not just coming to see me to resolve how you're going to overcome your little problems with each other. We actually have to overcome our own traumas within first.
Yeah.
And then we put that together with how we're going to interact with each other and how we're going to lift one another up and support. Because I believe in a relationship, we're just walking side by side. We're still living I'm still on my journey. My partner's still on their journey. And my role is to find a way where I can walk by their side and support them on their journey, while they support me on my journey by holding me up. Yeah. And giving me that heart-centered connection. So it's finding a way. Sorry, Lee, it is the middle of the night, so I'm going to ask you to repeat your question so that I don't go off on a tangent.
That's actually fine. I know it's probably about 2:30 in the morning now there for you, but no. So I think you were starting to answer the question, and I believe that too. I think what we went back to just now is that at first it's people taking responsibility for their own self first and foremost, and being compassionate around that and dealing with their own internal struggles or dialogues. But going back to the question was, so I think you started to answer it really. How do you, when you've got a couple that are starting to understand a little bit about themselves or each other, is there a certain way then that you work with them then?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, look, it's to be honest, the starting point in particular is nearly always the same. And, I deal with couples as well with fertility. And it's really fascinating because, again, it starts with themselves. Fertility is it requires the duality. It starts with each individual self, and it starts with traumas.
Yeah. Can you say more about that Tera-Sundri? I'm just imagining people listening who might have fertility issues, and their ears might be pricked up at that point. It's like, what? My trauma is impacting on my fertility?
Yeah, totally. It's really fascinating. I don't believe in infertility. So you'll notice I use the term fertility. I work with fertility, not infertility. Infertility is created by our lifestyle factors, And there's the very occasional, in which case I can't help. There's been some form of physical trauma where there's a blockage, let's say, to a fallopian tube, or a blockage in the men so that sperm can't get out. And obviously, in that case, yes, you require intervention.
Yeah.
But I have a 98% success rate, which is massive. It's
Wow.
absolutely phenomenal. Even IVF can't boast that. But it's only when I work with the two in the couple, the whole couple, and I will only work with the two. I won't just work with one partner. And we do that, and we do the entire process, and that includes not just doing the herbal medicines, what have you, but and balancing the herbs, but the hormones, but it requires the emotional component, which is the counselling. And there is always underlying stresses. That stress impacts our body in ways we are not even aware of. We don't even realize that these days the high adrenal states in which we are constantly living, and our body's designed to undergo stress, right? It can actually be a good thing for us, but only in short, sharp doses.
Yeah.
Our body's not designed to undergo continual stress, and when it does, it alters everything. And it starts with our glandular system. And it starts with the pineal gland, which is our master gland, which controls and regulates every other gland, and it controls and regulates our fertility. And so stress, physical stresses as well, like toxins in the environment and all, but mental and emotional stress, as we go through it in life, and it becomes normal and standard. And so we don't realize we're living in these high elevated stress states constantly, changes how our body's functioning internally. Yeah. And so as we start to touch on the underlying layers of traumas that people aren't even aware that they have, and I don't do all this, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, by the way, but childhood, inner child work, and journeying back into our trauma. I don't believe we need to relive it, because that creates the inner stress again. It creates that stress response. Yeah. But it's about changing the impact that the stress has had on our body. That's what I want.
Wow. It's something I get a sense as you're describing that, almost like there's some kind of energy that shifts or unblocks or starts to move in a different way. Which might facilitate more of a connection. Yes, of course. Yeah, of course. I'm really inspired by the way that you work with couples and work with fertility issues. I used to work with couples. Lee and I are a therapist too, and I used to work with couples, and it would always go something like this. What one partner would be blaming the other for their weaknesses, while the other was almost like victim of the blame of the other. And I don't know, for example, like, someone's really organized and the partner really isn't. And it's like, you should be more organized. And it's like, yeah, but I really struggle and I can't. And I just found it really, really difficult to work with. So I actually stopped working with couples. But it sounds like you have a very different approach that, I don't know, it just felt like it kind of facilitated more connection than maybe I was able to when I was working with couples.
That's where I think the Vedic and Yogic philosophy comes in, and it changes the approach completely. It all started many years ago when I was first trained as a naturopath, and I my specialty was fertility, and these couples would come in and they'd be so stressed intimately. This is how my whole journey evolved, because everything became about the calendar. We're working to a clock here, right? This is the time when she's most fertile, and so suddenly it lost all its intimacy, and then they lose their connection, and then they get more and more stressed trying to get pregnant, and then of course the stress comes into all areas of their life, and and on it goes, and that was what led me down this path in the first place. And because I realized that what started as such a beautiful connection between two people, so beautiful that they wanted to create more life through this and bring in more love, was actually destroying their connection. Yeah. And I thought, how can we, I I had to find ways to recreate that connection to eliminate the stresses that were affecting their fertility, right?
Mm.
And it took me many years to really be able to find what would work there. And it was through my Kundalini yoga practices that I started to develop an understanding of the deeper level of connection there. And so, yeah, I work with, okay, we can blame each other all we like, and that's wonderful. We're all guilty of doing this with other people, but at the end of the day, there's no solution there. The solution comes from understanding who I am at a deeper core and what my intimate needs are.
Yeah.
And understanding that my only role in this relationship with that person is not to make them meet my needs, but to understand how they can support me while I meet my needs.
Yeah.
Then I can't blame them for anything,
No.
because I'm solely responsible for meeting my needs, not them.
And
Their role is to support and love me.
Yeah. And to know what your needs are, and to have the ability to meet them yourself, while somebody else, I love that phrase from earlier, walks alongside, and they could support you in the meeting of your own needs. But I think so often in my experience, in couples work and in working with people on a one-to-one, is they blame. It's too much blame. There's like, my partner's this, or they're not enough that. And it's like, well, actually, you could take responsibility for those needs and try and get them met somehow yourself, rather than blame the other person for not doing it, or doing it badly, or whatever their blame is. Blame gets in the way a lot, I found.
Yeah,
It does. Victimization. What happens when we're blaming people is we're turning ourselves into a victim.
Yes.
Right? As soon as we start to blame somebody, we're putting ourselves in the role of a victim.
Yeah.
And that's not a useful place for any of us to live in.
No, not at all. It's disempowering as well, isn't it?
Very disempowering. Yeah. So if people want to remain in that role, I'm not the person for them.
No, quite right. Yeah. What were you going to say, Lou?
No, just touching on what you both said, really. I think there's lots of little spheres and areas we can go into and try and condense it down, really. But just continuing on, yes, about that responsibility in ourselves, and we can, and people to understand and their own self and their own triggers and traumas, and how they can be around that, because we're getting back into intimate relationships. And I think it also touched on what we've already talked about at the beginning about compassion, because I think a lot of people get into relationships thinking that the other person is there to meet their needs. Now that's where the problem lies for me, because a lot of people need to really understand what actually love is. Actually, if you take, for me, this is only my own belief, you take love and compassion on its purest form, is just a bodily experience and energy. And that can be, for me, I can feel that internal and externally, out in its purest form. But I'll bring it back into two people in relationship. People, there's two. If I can describe it as just for this purpose now, there could be like two types of love in an intimate relationship. There's desired love and there's compassionate love. And the desired love is all about the other person meeting my needs, be that sexually, compassionately, intellectually, etc. And the other one is just compassionate love. Just condensing this down right now, just for an explanation, it's just that you care for the other person's well-being, just pure and simple. Because you see two people in relationship, what they can get into, especially in arguments, is well, you don't spend time with me anymore, and you don't do this for me anymore. Oh, is that right? Well, you don't do this and this again. So, but where are they talking from? You're not meeting my needs. Mm-hmm. Now, what I'd find beneficial personally and professionally is, even taking it to myself personally, is actually getting a real sense of my own responsibility. Oh, okay, so how am I feeling? What's happening for me? Why am I feeling? Actually, I just feel quite lonely right now. I feel quite isolated and sad that the disconnections stopped. So it's best to express it from that place of my own understanding, saying, actually, I'm very vulnerable right now, and I feel quite lonely. And I say, now, if I'm feeling vulnerable, I'm sure you are. How can we come back together and reconnect? But a lot of people get really fastly caught up into, my needs aren't being met, this person being met, and going back into the blame. But actually, we need to actually relearn to all these things we've been talking about: responsibility, self-compassion, understanding, reconnection, and communicate from that space, and allowing the other person to know where we are, and vice versa. and this is where I am. This is where you are. Okay, so how can we support each other along this difficulty for each other?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was what I was going to say.
That's lovely.
That's huge.
It's massive, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
Bit blown away by it, really. It's like, how do we follow on from that, Tera-Sundri? Have you got anything to?
I think it's what we're all saying, really. You know, but we're just coming in from different ways of saying it. You know, yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. And that's where, again, when I do the Vedic readings of people, it just allows us to find, okay, the gaps where perhaps your strength in supporting, being able to support this person and reconnect with them. There's a big gap here where you just flow naturally into it, and they can, a big gap where they can do this for you, and it's just a natural part of who they are and what works easiest for them. And when you help them to do that, they will naturally reconnect. I'm just going to say, from my perspective, you mentioned desire, and I loved the way you explained that, but that's still, where I teach people, because we do eventually evolve into sometimes with some couples working with more tantric connection, and again, I'm going to say there's a bit of a I'm going to use the term misunderstanding, but it's probably partially intentional because sex sells, right? Sexualization of what Tantra is, but in the Western understanding. But we use that to help people connect as well, because desire still comes down to self. It's still a need for self, where we just we need to express our vulnerability in order to achieve that need.
Absolutely.
And what's more vulnerable than getting naked with someone, right?
Yeah, I get that. I suppose leading on from what I said just now about the desired love and compassionate love, like the desired love can be sexual, and it can be physical. It can be other needs being met as well. But what I'd like to say to people as well, it's not wrong to have desire, but in relationship, it's that you need to have a foundation of compassionate love with the desire sat on top, because I've got needs, and we've all got needs, but that's where but you need the compassionate love to have the foundation, and you're going to get much more stronger connection from that place in being together from that place. If you've got the desire as the foundation and the compassion on top, that's when it's going to be a bit more of a wobbling. If you're just coming straight from always need to be met,
It's considered a bit selfish.
Yeah, so it can be called self-centered love, desired love, etc. But I agree with you, Tera-Sundri. There's nothing wrong with having desires, and communicating those desires, but it's also staying inclusive with your partner. Yeah, within that.
There's two phrases, Tera-Sundri. I wonder if you could just explain them. Two phrases that everybody listening may not be familiar with: Tantra and Kundalini. Would you mind just saying a little bit about those two things, just so that we know what you're meaning when you use them?
Wow, Kundalini. I always have trouble when people ask me to explain it, because to me it's a big cover. No, don't be sorry. It's just that to me it incorporates so much.
Right, yeah, it's a big
it's kind of a big part of my world. Kundalini and Tantra are very intertwined, and they're about working with our Kundalini is a form of yoga, but it also is an energy that exists within us. And Kundalini is our rawest energy, our most potent form of energy, and also can be our sexual energy. But because it's our life force, it's our creative energy, it sits right down in our sexual chakras. But it's not just our sexual energy. It is all about creation, and it's the energy we use to create life, which is why it's our sexual energy. But it also, because it's our creative energy, it's our most potent form of energy, and we can transpose it for any purposes. And so in Kundalini, we in Kundalini yoga, and we learn tools to utilize that energy for our well-being and to connect with it on a deeper level. And so using Tantra is one of those tools. And Tantra, or tantric energy, Tantra is about connecting with self, with body, with energy, and then using that within our relationships, within our connections with others.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, because I think this could open up a whole new different podcast just purely on this Tera-Sundri that, because there's so much, even for me, it feels like a real big topic, you know, because there's so much energy within, you know, this area, you know, and you know, and real connection in energy and absorption. So without going into, I think there's so much we could talk about within that. So maybe we'll get back again at some point and just have a whole episode on that.
Interesting, wouldn't it? Yeah. Every time we record an episode of the podcast, Tera-Sundri, we always say, "Oh, there's a podcast in that," because the conversation just evolves into more and more. So, yeah, every time we do one, we create a list of another 5 or 6 episodes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because for me and that, there would just be so much to talk about. Just for me, just so much depth of connection and energy, and yeah, and very soul-led, spiritual stuff within that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I'll leave that there because I think I would like to touch on another time.
To be continued. That
yeah,
definitely. I appreciate what you said, Tera-Sundri, about vulnerability. It's something that Lee and I have spoken about in other episodes, you know, like so much energy goes into avoiding vulnerability because it's deemed to be like a terrible, scary, awful thing or place to be. And we've tried in previous episodes to kind of say, you know, well, actually it's not that bad. No one dies from being vulnerable, you know, allowing themselves to be vulnerable. And so it's interesting to hear you talk about, you know, the vulnerability of being naked in like Tantra work. And I can imagine there is huge benefits in that, but I'm also imagining for people who've experienced some kind of, you know, sexual violation or something, how that vulnerability could be almost beyond reach. I don't know if you've experienced that in your work.
I mean, I don't, you know, people don't get naked in front of me or in front of others. It's just a bit, I guess it was just you know, an expression of referring to once we start to have intimate relationships with others, you know.
Yeah, but even in that setting, it can be difficult.
Totally. And the thing is that, and this, sadly, it is those sort of traumas that shut down our vulnerabilities, shut down our capacity to open up to them. And that's where it's really important to work through them, is because Brené Brown, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Brené Brown. Right. She's amazing because she says vulnerability is courage.
Yeah.
It's not a weakness, it's courage, because it takes such courage to be vulnerable, because we are having to confront all of our traumas in order to show our vulnerabilities to someone. And we are opening ourselves to the possibility of rejection, which creates more trauma within, right?
Yeah.
So vulnerability takes enormous courage. And it's a big part of the work that I do, is helping people to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that's where Tantra is very powerful, because it helps people to be vulnerable again. And once they become vulnerable, once they're able to be vulnerable regardless of all the past traumas that they've experienced, once they're in a safe place to be vulnerable, and we start with just simple little exercises, you know, between myself and them. Once they're able to feel safe with that vulnerability, it opens up a whole new realm to them, because it is empowering, and it does. The reason people aren't being vulnerable is because they don't feel safe.
Yeah.
And safety is a need, right? I mean, the only thing we really are here to do for our children is to make them feel safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's the same with other people. We all just need to be safe. That's our first. Everything we do is about being safe. It's just a natural survival instinct for the ego. And so vulnerability, the reason people don't want to show their vulnerabilities is because they don't feel safe. So all it's really about is bringing them back to feeling safe.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if you can allow them to feel safe, then they can allow themselves to be vulnerable. So we start with just little, really simple things and then evolve into the bigger. And that is where they're then able, regardless of their traumas, once they start to realize that they're still safe,
Yeah,
they can open up those vulnerabilities on more intimate and sexual levels as well.
absolutely.
And that's where we'll take them.
Yeah. So here's a question for you both. Do you think you can be intimate without vulnerability?
Oh, that's a good question.
It just came to me then because for me, I'm not sure it's possible. You know, to have that real connection requires me, I think, to be vulnerable to some extent. So I was wondering if.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I was thinking.
Sorry, you weren't expecting that, were you?
No, but it's a great question. It's a great question because I mean, it's what I deal with all the time. No, I don't think you can be intimate without vulnerability because it's intimacy, as we said, it's a heart-centered connection. Yeah. And our heart becomes closed when we're not being vulnerable.
What about you, Lee? Can you have intimacy without vulnerability?
Well, I know I won't want to.
Okay, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I think no, I don't think so because you know me quite well, Mark, as well. Emotional vulnerability is a big area that I like to work in with people, etc. So it's quite an important part even for me, a person. But no, I think the short answer is no. I don't think that we can be intimate without vulnerability, and if we are, it's just very, very superficial, and there's no depth to that. So no, I don't think so. I don't, because no. So the answer, I think the good answer is actually you can't, because if you're not really vulnerable with in intimacy, you're not really being intimate or vulnerable. It's just all surface level. So, and there's no intimacy in depth within that.
No. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, that question just literally came up, but I'm thinking it might help people, you know, who are struggling with intimacy to kind of explore their own relationship with vulnerability. Because you know, like if they can't be vulnerable with themselves, they're not going to be able to have intimacy or connection with their partner or whoever, are they? So might be a starting point for people.
It's a bit like just changing the mindset around it as well. Tera-Sundri, just remind me what you said just now about people. You know, some people can see it as, or they get a belief system that, you know, from their life experiences, that it's a weakness to be emotional, but vulnerability. But actually, it takes real courage and strength to be vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And if for many years, for some people, many decades, that you've not been connected emotionally, especially when times are difficult, you've been running away from your emotional vulnerability. You know, naturally to be with it takes strength. So to turn it around, where's the real weakness and where's the real strength?
Absolutely.
Running away from your emotions, or actually
it's empowering.
To be with them.
Oh, empowering.
Yeah. Empowering takes strength, you know.
It does.
And in my experience, and I always find this because I've done individual work and I've done group work, and especially on group work when we're having these discussions, actually it's the most beautiful thing when that energy in the room and everybody's hearts are open and they're emotionally connected and speaking from that place. Even if you're not speaking, you can just feel a calm, beautiful energy. You know? Yeah.
Because it's who we are at the core. It's who we are. It's that heart-centered connection.
Yeah, we were born with all these connections. It's the life experiences that have just chipped away or made us recline in and disconnect to adapt our environments and to survive. And it's just about us, once again, just seeking the support and the help and having the courage to reconnect and become our authentic self again. Indeed. Which is a beautiful thing.
But we were born absolutely hardwired for connection.
Yeah.
So it's what happened after that scattered the pigeons a little bit. Tera-Sundri, I'm aware of how late into the night this is. Have you got time for just a couple more quick questions before you retreat for your bed and much needed sleep?
My second half of sleep,
Yeah, we just got a couple more questions if that's okay with you. So you've worked with the rich and famous. Do they actually struggle less than the rest of us?
No.
No. Well, I wanted to ask because, like the fantasy could be, look, if only I was that wealthy or that famous or that, well, life would be okay, but maybe it's not the case.
No, it's not the case. They have look, it's really interesting. They can afford all the therapies under the sun, I guess, is the difference. But no, they have the same traumas. What I am going to say is, in fact, some of them, and I think this is probably the same in any area in which people are successful, are actually carrying immense amounts of trauma.
Mm.
And it's their degree of focus, which has allowed them to be successful in what they do, is driven as they've shut down all the vulnerabilities. That's their protection. They focus on this one aspect that they're good at, and they put so much focus and commitment to it that they don't need to allow their vulnerabilities in, right?
Yeah.
But and so oftentimes that's what has actually got them to where they are in the first place. But in dealing with rich and famous, and obviously I can't give names.
No, I didn't expect you to do that. No.
Incredibly high caliber. And what I'm going to say is that we're all the same.
We're all the same, yeah.
We're all hardwired for connection. And at some point in time, when that connection is not there, and when their traumas are bouncing off other people, it becomes a concern for them. And the one thing I'm going to say is that they are probably the easier people to deal with, purely because to get to where they are at, or some of them are born, like royalty, are born into that, but they're so focused and dedicated to achieving a certain goal, a certain outcome.
Yeah, so driven, so motivated. Yeah.
They have that same degree of dedication and drive to self-development, self-growth, once they see that is necessary. Not all of them see it necessary, but those who do have that same degree of commitment and drive. So they're just like, what do I have to do? Give it to me. Give it to me. Raw, hard.
I'll do
Let's
it.
lay out this plan, and I will do it.
Yeah. That's good. And
it doesn't matter how hard it is.
Whereas, I wouldn't put myself in the category of rich and famous, but I've certainly been very well known. I've traveled across the world doing mediumship and demonstrations and that kind of work. And when I look back at all that now, I've worked in front of very large audiences. And when I look back at that now, actually, it was my need for intimacy and connection that was driving that work, because there was something wonderful about the adoration of the audiences, and the feedback and the offers of more work. But of course, at the same time, what it was actually doing was disconnecting me from intimacy, because it's really hard to have an intimate relationship with 500 people in an audience.
Yeah.
So actually, it was like some kind of misguided attempt to have connection, but actually it wasn't really working. And so I've kind of really scaled down. Yeah, I've really scaled down my work now, because realizing that actually I'm not going to get that kind of connection or intimacy need met by traveling the world, working with large audiences. It's just not going to do it. So I can't do it anymore.
No, you don't have a support network around you of close friends and family. You don't have extracurricular activities in which you interact with other people. It's near impossible to have an intimate relationship. You just no level of intimacy.
No, very lonely. It sounds very glamorous. A month in Japan, working all over Japan, but very lonely, actually.
Going back to your hotel room on your own.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not. There isn't connection or intimacy. There isn't. It's just loneliness and stress, I guess.
And that's why I stopped doing it as well.
You stopped doing it too,
yeah.
Amazing. The last question that we were going to put to you, Tera-Sundri, is about your health retreats. You've spoken a bit about your Kundalini classes and what might happen in those, but what might happen if someone came on one of your health retreats? Can you tell us a bit about those?
Yeah, well, and interestingly, I don't run set retreats every year.
Right.
I get an inspiration. It's like a calling, and I go, oh, I need to do a retreat on this. And I just, it all flows because it's meant to be. And so what might happen, it's very, very based around, again, the yogic philosophies, Kundalini philosophies, Vedic philosophies at my retreats. And they're very, very much about self-empowerment, getting to know yourself on an intimate level. It doesn't really matter what focus the topic of the retreat is. It always ends up coming down to understanding ourselves a little bit better on an intimate level. Yeah.
And where are these? Are they in Australia or online or both? Or could they be anywhere? Both?
Yeah, both. Yeah. So I have clients all over the world. And so it's really interesting because I'm currently talking with someone about doing some in person in Canada.
Right.
But most of them, or certainly at the minute, they're all in Australia,
right.
Or online. And I've had to stop doing online for the past year, just because of where I was living there. I had only satellite, and I was in the rainforest. It used to drop out all the time, and it wasn't working. So I've had a real break from it all, which is great. It's just allowed me to evolve and recreate what's going to come next.
Wow, wonderful. And so if we did want to keep an eye on your retreats, I guess most of our audience is likely to be kind of around the UK. So we'd probably be more interested in the online ones, unless somebody wants to travel to Australia, of course. How would we find out about what you're doing and the possibility of joining a retreat?
Honestly, the best way at this point in time is to connect with me on either good old Facebook or on social media, Facebook or Instagram.
Okay.
Again, like I say, my whole online profile has not really been very active this last year. But when I get back to Australia at the beginning of 2024, that will all change.
Okay, all right. And we'll pop your Facebook details in the show notes around this podcast so people can find you.
Yeah. And the Instagram is the Kundalini Woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Any final questions from you, Lee?
No questions. I just want to thank you, Tera-Sundri, for coming in. I found it a very useful and a very beautiful chat with you, actually. And I really enjoyed it. And hopefully in 2024, we might have that the other podcast in the other areas. So it'd be great. It'd be great to have you back, actually.
It would be lovely, yeah.
We've covered so much, haven't we?
We have, yeah. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. Honestly, it's been such a joy. And I feel I do feel a connection, and I guess it's something I want to say. So we can. It's a fine line. We can be so disconnected in this world, in this online world, and yet we can connect online. And that's Absolutely. What, and this is, I never thought I'd run retreats online because once upon a time, I thought it was the online world was the whole cause of our disconnect, but it's not. And we can create amazing connections online, and it's really beautiful to have been able to do that. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. In what other way would two guys in Britain connect with an Australian who's in Canada? I mean, without the online world, that just wouldn't happen, would it? So thank you so much for joining us from your hotel bathroom in the middle of the night. It's so appreciated, honestly.
I hope you get some sleep.
Next time we connect, I will double check the time difference.
The time difference, yeah, be great. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for listening to another episode of Your Authentic Self. We'll be back again with another episode soon, but in the meantime, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons depending on where you're accessing this, and do share with your friends because it just helps us to reach many more people. So until next time, goodbye for now.
We appreciate you taking the time to listen to us today. If anything you have heard has resonated with you, you would like to explore more, or have found difficult, you can get in touch with us. Our details are in the show notes below, along with some other useful links.